So we're going to come back to what has happened since we last spoke about him, Terence Crosbie, the Irish firefighter who was on trial in Boston he was accused of raping a woman while she was asleep in a hotel room in March of 2024. Now, after 4 days of the jury deliberations, the case was what was called a hung jury, declared a mistrial. And that's when the jury basically cannot agree to a verdict, be it guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
But in the US, unlike here, a judge can't order a majority verdict, which often happens when 12 members of a jury can't agree. There could be a situation in Ireland where the jury will be deliberating for a period of time. The judge will call them back. Sometimes will ask them, are they near whatever? And would it be helpful if he offered them or she offered them a majority verdict, which is often the case. And they can come back and 10 or 11 people can convict or acquit.
It wouldn't be a majority verdict in the normal understanding of the word where it's, 5 against 6 or whatever.
No.
So they tend to allow 1 or 2 disagreements.
11-1 or 10-2.
Yes. So we did, for example, the Richard Satchwell trial, it didn't go to a majority verdict, even though it went, I think, for 3 days, was it? Or even into the 4th day. But normally, if it gets to that point, the judge in Ireland will say a majority verdict is now acceptable. But in America... And
I'm going to say the UK and other countries as well run majority verdicts, but America is completely different.
Yeah.
They needed all 12 members of the jury to agree.
Unanimously. Yeah. So it's an issue in American law. There's sometimes a debate about it, changing the system. But anyway, in this case, clearly a unanimous verdict was not reached.
Yeah. And now, I suppose behind that is who was thinking what on the jury, and we don't know that. Was there a majority of people looking to find Terence Crosbie not guilty, or was there a kind of a larger number of people who found him guilty?
Because
what we do know is that this is going back now. There's a period of 30 days when the state prosecutor will decide essentially what will be done. It is possible that Crosbie, and who we should say, by the way, has absolutely categorically denied he raped a woman and denied, he did anything wrong whatsoever.
Yeah.
And we'll go through a little bit of the evidence that was heard during the trial shortly. But he has been held since March of 2024 in Suffolk County Jail, which is an extraordinary thing to happen and wouldn't probably happen in this country, that somebody would be held for so long in custody. Now, I think there was bail set at an enormous amount of money, was there?
As far as I know, there was bail set at 100,000, something that's beyond the reach of, normal person, really.
Yeah.
I suppose in Ireland, bail is not guaranteed, I suppose. And a guard, we'll often report on it how Gardaí might have objected to bail. But bail is, it's a very normal part of the legal system in Ireland. Somebody like Terence Crosbie, look, we're only speculating, but the fact is he has no criminal convictions. He has
completely denied
the charge. Has not likely to interfere with witnesses. I mean, there's just clearly not going to be the case in this case, which would be one of the primary reasons why guards in Ireland would object to somebody getting bail, that they may interfere with witnesses or they may have huge resources to inspire somebody else, particularly in...
Well, the flight risk is always big.
But that would be...
was going to leave the country. Yeah. It'd be hard to see why there couldn't have been an agreement.
Yes.
That he could have come home pending the trial and agreed to go back out. There's no suggestion that there's anything in his background that would suggest that he wouldn't cooperate with the authorities.
No, I mean, the flight risk is I suppose the fact is he's in another country. And that would, you can understand maybe that would add to the sense of being a flight risk. However, if he has a passport, you can't just get out of America using your own passport if there's a block on it. He's not somebody who's likely to have contacts in the underworld or anything like that to get him out. So it's a long time to spend in prison.
It really is.
And if it's in cases in Ireland, it happens here as well, where there's mistrials and a case comes back again, due to come back again before the courts. In that case, bails would you can't guarantee anything, but the courts would look at that again as favourable, that you've this delay to getting justice would be perceived to be unfair.
Now, Suffolk Prison is a remand prison for people like him who are awaiting trial. It is not, again, American prisons would have a reputation as not being, some would say, as luxurious as the Irish prison system, really.
No.
There certainly isn't a huge amount of outdoor time, fresh air time, of exercise time. But we do understand that he is quite a popular prisoner. He's kept his head down. He's taken up employment in the jail, and he's reading, and he's trying to keep himself occupied. He, of course, is a family man with 2 children, and his wife stood with him during the original trial that has just concluded with this mistrial. So he's now basically going to be, there's a 30-day period where a decision can be made. In the States, a lot of times people accused of a crime might be offered a plea deal. So that would be, in other words, he went on trial for rape. He could possibly be offered, you know what, how about attempted sexual assault? How about this? A lesser charge. And would you plead to that? Now, he is very determined that he is not guilty of doing anything wrong. And I think he used those words within the courtroom. So I think it would be surprising if he does take a plea deal. You don't know what is going to happen. The attorney could also decide that the trial goes ahead again. And if it does go ahead again, it's likely to happen next October, which is another period of...
but there's typically...
8 months, is it, in custody?
Yeah, it's another lengthy period anyways.
Yeah.
So if a trial is to be reheard in Ireland, same as the US, there's what is called a cooling off period. That case would have been in the newspapers, on the news media in America. People may have heard about it, may have heard snippets of it. They have to then get a jury for October, and they want the case not to be fresh in their minds. Anybody who would have an extensive knowledge of it obviously wouldn't be suitable for a jury anyway. But a lot of people may have heard something about it, and they give it a cooling off period, I suppose. So that would be the idea. I mean, the case itself did generate quite a lot of interest in both here and in the US, I suppose, given the fact that he's a firefighter. Boston's a very, very close,
very Irish town.
Very Irish town. He was over for to march in the Paddy's Day parade representing Dublin Fire Brigade, so that would also give it more attention. And obviously, look, the allegation itself is a serious allegation. But
so the evidence heard was that last year, a then 28-year-old woman told police that she had been out in Boston. She had met an Irish man called Liam O'Brien, a colleague of Crosbie's, in a bar when she was out, and that she ended up basically going back to a hotel room with him, the Omni Parker House. And she told police that she had consensual sex with Mr. O'Brien, and that she then claims that she fell asleep in a second bed in the room, and that she woke up to another man raping her.
Yeah.
This was horrific. She got out of the room and she went to police, made the complaints, and investigation began. In the meantime, police spoke to Terence Crosbie and others, and he decided that he was going to come back to Ireland and not hang around for the Patrick's Day parade he'd gone over to.
Yeah, I mean, in I suppose he was interviewed by police, not arrested. But
he just spoke to them.
Yeah, so he was questioned, and obviously knew he was talking to a policeman, but it wasn't a formal arrest. And he told the court that at the end of that interview, he asked the police, am I free to go? Am I under any suspicion? And that he did ultimately go to the airport and change the time of his flight, which obviously doesn't look great. Ultimately, he was arrested getting on that changed flight. But however, he was clear in court that he got a bit panicked and decided to go home, and that he specifically asked the police, "Am I entitled to go?" And they said, "Of course, there's no barrier to you going." So that is what the explanation he gave.
Okay. And he also admitted that he went into the room, but what he had said was that his friend, Mr. O'Brien, met this woman. They went back to the hotel, and it was clear, obviously, that they were going to be together. So he came out of the room and left them there for over 2 hours. And he's seen on CCTV in the corridor of this hotel and waiting. And he eventually goes into the room, and he says that it was dark. He used the torch on his phone to find his way to his own bed, and he sort of stumbled into the bed, got into the bed, and shortly after that, he says he realised there was somebody walking around the room, and this woman left. I think he was suggesting he thought that the other two, O'Brien and this woman who'd met, were asleep in the other bed.
Yeah.
As far as he knew.
They were obviously sharing a room, O'Brien
They were sharing a room.
Terence Crosbie.
The hotel... the hotel, again, I said this to you before, hotels are really good crime scenes because they're covered in CCTV, and of course the room will note when people go in and out of them. So the hotel showed that this woman had left the hotel room about 20 minutes after Crosbie had entered, and immediately then we heard during the trial she messaged a friend to say she'd been sexually assaulted and attended a police station. She went home or something, got changed, but brought her clothing with her to a police station, and there it all kicked off.
So there's two different accounts. I mean, it really comes down to this. So there's Terence Crosbie's account, which is in direct contradiction to the alleged victim. There's a lot of facts that are agreed on, because you can see him going into the room at a certain time and her leaving at a certain time. So then when it comes to a criminal trial, you have to see what can be independently verified or what can be shown beyond a reasonable doubt. And a lot of this case, Liam O'Brien, who was in the other bed, I think both Terence Crosbie and the alleged victim agreed that he slept through this. He was snoring. She said that and he has said that. So he is no use as an independent witness. So a lot of this case comes down to the DNA that was found on the woman when she went and was swabbed basically in a sexual assault unit after being brought there by police. And that really was the key element of the case, or one of the very key elements of the case, as well as Terence Crosbie, who got on the stand and gave his version of events.
And there was evidence given in the trial in relation to the DNA, and we're hopefully going to come back to that again because it does seem absolutely key to this case. But the fact is that Terence Crosbie's DNA was not a match of the two identified DNAs on the...
So basically the woman is swabbed both in, from all parts of her body, let's put it that way. And, as part of that, there's male DNA found, one of them, which is Liam O'Brien's, which is, again, not controversial.
No, not contested in any way. So around the DNA, what happened in the courtroom was that an analyst described how there was tests done to separate female DNA from male DNA found on the victim's body, okay? And the DNA analyst, a woman called Alexis Decasaris, testified that process was conducted, and she said the results were consistent, that there were two individuals separate from the complainant who were both male, that DNA profiles were found.
Yeah.
Earlier in the day, an officer from the police crime lab said there was a likelihood that one of those male profiles belonged to O'Brien, but this technician, this Miss Casares, said it was unclear if the second set of male DNA collected from the complainant was deposited by Crosbie. Later, under cross-examination, she was asked directly, and it was said to her, "Your testing did not identify Terence Crosbie's DNA on that genital swab, did you?" And she said that was correct.
Yes.
So in other words, his DNA was not identified on the genital swabs, which revealed two male DNA profiles, one of which was likely to be Mr. O'Brien's. Now, there was, however, DNA discovered elsewhere. Of course, Terence Crosbie was in the room, stayed in the room, slept in the room, etc.
Yeah.
And that is where that was left with that. But it was a sort of I suppose, a key point in the case and in the evidence. If the trial goes ahead, again, this evidence is all going to be reheard.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, that's a kind of a complex tale. I suppose in a criminal court, something has to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is what the real challenge the prosecutors are going to face. Because while they could say there's 2 samples and things are unclear, the facts will show that Terence Crosbie's DNA was not found in the samples from what's described as the genital extract. And, that is the evidence given by a DNA analysis from the Boston Police Department lab.
Yeah.
So that is going to be...
And that's in a case where a alleged victim has said she awoke while being raped.
Yes.
By Mr. Crosbie.
Yes, effectively inside her, she woke up and described it as being a nightmare. So, look, these trials are complex, but America, while we've spoken about the differences, the legal systems have a lot of similarities. They're both heard before a jury. There's there's a similar prosecution and defence, which we don't see necessarily across all European systems, and a case has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not enough for there to be a doubt of guilt. There has to be beyond all reasonable doubts, effectively. So it'll come back. It's due to come back. A date has been set for the 14th of October. Obviously, as you've spoken about, there can be changes in the lead up to that. But yeah, it's another long wait, I suppose.
For Mr. Crosbie and his family, along with the victim.
Along with the victim.
Okay, we'll definitely come back to this story.
Yes, thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.